All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week 2, Publishing Live. I'm here excited to talk about creating your game. All right, so last week we just had the getting started part. A lot of you guys seem to enjoy it. Really excited about that. I'm excited to do this one as well. Have some pretty cool stuff to share. All right, so what are we going to talk about this week? Well, and when I say this week, we're actually doing these back to back. I had a death in the family last week. I apologize for that, so I had to go out of town unexpectedly. And I'm back. Everything's good. And so now we're going to finish this up today, tomorrow, and the next day, and have Publishing Live completely done. So it's going to be an exciting week here. All right, so this week, we're going to talk about the attention to detail. And listen, guys, I'm going to really drive this home. This is a really important one. It's the biggest mistake. I talked about this, started talking about it last week. The biggest mistake I see customers making is not this attention to detail. And we're going to put Nick over here. He's in the office with me. We're going to put him on the chopping block, talk about Sky and what he did with that attention to detail. Then we're going to talk about core loop, surprise, and wonder. In my opinion, this is the most important part of the game creation process when we're talking about gameplay, okay? And I'm going to tell you about a recent conversation I had with some people. And this came up. They were asking me, what do you think is the most important part of a game? How can we really identify good games? It was a big publisher. And this is what we ended up talking about. All right, then I'm going to talk about the look of your game. Obviously, that's an important one, right? And we talked some about this a lot in the course, really. We have a whole section on design. Now, listen, if you haven't seen Game Studio University, make sure you do, because we talk a lot. And I did all the section on art, and I really drive this stuff home. So I'm not going to spend an hour or 2 hours like I do in the course on that, but I'm going to talk about some important points and show you a couple little tricks and some things I use that we did not mention in Game Studio University. And then I'm going to close it out with my 5 gameplay rules. And then, of course, after that, we're going to do some Q&A. All right, so I did not want this section to turn into just a build box tutorial. We've already had a grade A trainers create a ton of tutorial videos on using our software. You guys have seen that. It's all on the portal. And there's multiple independent communities out there like learnbuildbox.com and some more that are dedicated to this on YouTube. I've seen a couple new ones pop up in the past month. It's getting more and more popular to have independent tutorials. So I do want to mention that before we continue. If there's a specific thing you want to know how to do, like the exploding character or something like that, you can find all of that on YouTube. All right, just search around. There's a ton of videos on there that are talking about BuildBox, okay? My goal, like in the first part of this series, is to give you guys the foundation that you're going to need to create great games that will get published. That's what this is about. This is not a game design course, okay? We already did that. We did that in Game Studio University. Instead, this is a Get You Published course, and that's the main goal. So we're going to talk about the parts of game design, the parts of creating your game that I think are important to publishers. And as a publisher ourselves and working closely with multiple publishers from Ketchup and Absolute and more, we've learned a lot through the process, okay? So, and we're going to start it now with attention to detail. In the Game Studio University course, I talk a lot about atmosphere, especially in the sound section, in the art section. So it's so important, it's worth repeating. I think a great example of atmosphere is a BuildBox game called Sky. And you guys have, of course, seen Sky. This was Nick's magnus opus, his game that he really worked hard on and published with Ketchup, did a fantastic job. Besides Ball Jump, it's the most successful game ever created with BuildBox. It's our most successful game, hit number 7 in the App Store, number 2 game, all right? So this is Sky. And, you know, it's a simple game. And we're going to talk about this. It's not like there's anything that hasn't been done before. So why did it do so good? I mean, it is beautiful, but why is it beautiful? What is great about this game? What's great about the gameplay? What's great about the look? How come this game did so well when it beat out, honestly, most of Ketchup's games, right? Did really, really good. There's been maybe 4 or 5 Ketchup games that have done better. Not many, just a handful. So why is that? So why does Sky have such great atmosphere? It's because of atmosphere, but why? It's a very simple game. Definitely not the first isometric game made of polygons, right? We've seen, God, that's about been done to death. The answer is, hold on, guys. I just had something pop up on my screen. So I need to push that back over. You guys can't see that, but my GoToWebinar just popped up. All right, there we go. All right, the answer is one of the most important parts of game design. To backtrack, it's very simple. It's definitely not the first isometric, so why does it have such great atmosphere? The answer is one of the most important parts of game design. It's attention to detail. So many people have made isometric games, but they don't do this part. This is what separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls. It's easy to make a minimal isometric game. Any of you guys can do it in a matter of days, but it's hard to make one that oozes style and has lots of detail. That is extremely hard. Let's look at what Sky does really right. All right, so first let's check out the gameplay. Cloning. All right, and listen, I know you guys don't have this yet. We're working on it, right? It's going to be coming. But I just want to talk about gameplay and game design in general. Let's talk about what it does that's unique. Cloning. Never seen that other game period out there. And the only reason this is coming in BuildBox is because Nick just invented this. He thought it was really cool, all right? And I can't think of any game off the top of my head that does cloning, especially in this style. Portals, right? And also he added those together. It's really cloned portals, which is pretty cool. Paths, right? You don't see a lot of games doing paths. Multiple jump types. You have the hold jump, which is going to end up being like Impossible Game or Geometry Dash. Then you have the double jump, and they both are implemented together. Again, I've never seen that done. Lots of firsts in this game as far as I know of, and it lends for very unique, interesting gameplay. Now let's look at the design. All right, a lot of people have asked about the design in Sky, how some things are done. I'm going to show you now. First off, the design in Sky, which is extremely important, is really a study in less is more. All right, he did not go crazy with this game. And in fact, whenever he added something new, he would show me, we would look at it together, and we'd go, man, it's just, I think you need to bring it back. You need to bring it back. So let's look at what he did. First off, a lot of people wanted to know, how does he have this cool shadow thing going on up top? How does everything fade? It's really simple. All it is a transparent gradient piece. The very top of that gradient is white. The bottom of it's transparent, so it slowly fades. And that's not on the actual scene editor. It's not in the game. This is on the gameplay UI screen. So you have the score there, you have the pause button, then below that, under it, there's just a little gradient piece. It makes everything really fade out and have this cool aesthetic look. Also, he added these cool trails on the character. I want to mention something. Everything you guys are going to see on this design part is available in BuildBox 1.3 right now. All right, I know some of the gameplay stuff wasn't, but all of this is. And again, I haven't seen anyone do a trail just like he did. And each character had its own unique trail, which was a really cool, unique idea. The characters are really bright colors in a drab world, right? There's not a lot going on in this world. In fact, one of the two colors in the whole game besides the character is you have the green portals, then you have the yellow coins. That's it. It puts all the focus on that character. All right, now Nick, like myself, is a fanatic on attention to detail. We could show many examples like this on every hit game we've made over the years. 99% of the people who make games, they stop development after the core creation of the game is done. With us, that's typically the first 20% of development. I mentioned it before. With Phases, I made that game in about 2 weeks. I'm talking about all the levels, all the design. Then we spent around 5-6 weeks tweaking the game and tweaking it. Oh, look, on scene 54, you get stuck every once in a while right here. Oh, look, it seems to be a little bit hard on scene 23. When you try to make this jump, it's like you can't quite fall in there. Get my wife to play it. Hey, what do you think about this? Is this jump too hard? My daughter, hey, do you think it's a little bit weird right here? And that tweaking and attention to detail is what really, really took the extra time. Now with Nick's, it was different because he had a more complex looking game. He did spend a lot of time on the design. And we changed a lot of different things. Typically what our process, you might be wondering, what is this extra 80% of development? Typically it's making the game easier. I found that's a very common thread. We make a game extremely hard to the point of frustrating. We're gonna talk about that in a second when creating a good game, how you don't wanna do that. And then we will have to spend a lot of time easing off the difficulty and getting rid of the cheated death feeling. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. When you die and then you feel like it wasn't your fault, that it was the game design's fault. That is the biggest deal killer with the game. And you guys I know have done this. And if you look at publishers who put out a game that doesn't do well, very, very often you'll notice you feel cheated when you play the game. It's like, oh man, well, how was I going to know that I should have moved right? It's moving too fast. Or, this game, the mechanics feel weird. I shouldn't have died there. When you feel like that, you are not going to have a successful game, guaranteed. All right, so whomever said the devil is in the details is 100% correct. So now we're going to talk about the core loop, surprise, and wonder. These are my 3 favorite parts of game design. I think they're the most important parts. I was recently talking with a big publisher about the most important factors of game design. And this is what I said. I think the most important part is probably the core loop. But it's not the most exciting part. Surprise and wonder are the most exciting part, and we'll talk about that next. So if you're not familiar with the core loop, let me walk you through how this works. And when you're creating a game, even simple games like this, you need to identify, know what the core loop is, and then gauge how fun it is. It's that simple, okay? So the core loop is the basic play loop of your game. It's interesting. It's funny how everything kind of flows in the same manner. Well, when you code, it's all a big loop. If you guys have ever coded anything before, like a game, a video game, or even build blocks of software itself, it's nothing but a big loop that rotates after it sees what the user inputs. The user inputs and clicks here, well then we change the loop, but then we start looping and we're waiting for the user to click something else to cancel that loop and go back to the previous loop. All it is a big infinite loop anytime you're running any software in the world, even OS X or Windows or anything, okay? So it's the same when playing your game. You're also doing a loop. And this doesn't just work for video games either. It works for any type of game in the world. If we look at child's games like dodgeball or something like that, they all work on a loop. All right, if we look at games like baseball or football, sports games, they all work on a very specific structured loop until a goal is reached and the game is finished, okay? So my favorite example of a core loop is probably the most simple. It's a slot machine. It's really like a Skinner box mentality, a slot machine. If you haven't studied that before, that's pretty interesting stuff as well. But it's proven to be extremely efficient. It's really, you take a loop, a core loop of a game, any type of game out there, and you break it down to its most basic barriers, and you end up with the slot machine core loop. All right, so let's look at that loop. It's going to start off and you're going to input a coin into the slot machine. Then you're going to pull down a lever after you put your coin in. Then you're going to hopefully get a reward or not get a reward. And then you're going to repeat. We have deconstructed the complete and utter whole part of the slot machine experience. That's it, right? Now, some things obviously happen between this pull lever and get reward. We're going to see things line up, but that's all the user really does is just input a coin, pull a lever, get a reward or not, and then start over. That's it. Every game has a core loop. And again, not just video games. The more complex the game, the bigger the loop. For example, let's check out blackjack. This has a pretty interesting core loop. It's a lot more complex, but not near as complex as the core loop in Clash of Clans or something like that. All right, so with blackjack, you're first going to make a bet. Then you're going to receive cards after you make that bet. Then you're going to analyze the house. We're assuming you're playing blackjack at a casino, okay? You're going to see what the house cards are. You're either going to stay or you're going to hit. Then you're either going to get a reward or you're going to bust. And then you're going to make a bet. Now this core loop stops whenever the player walks away. And that's one thing I like comparing mobile games, especially endless games, to casino games because they both stop the same way. When the player walks away is when it's over. It's not like baseball, which is going to stop after 9 innings. And if you had to put that out there, you would have many sub loops. And then you would have the final sub loop stops when you hit the 9th inning. And then of course you would have a little bit of logic there on whoever has the highest score wins. But with blackjack and with slots, it's very similar to mobile games. All right, so now let's see something like a mobile game. Let's look at Sky. Here's the Sky core loop. You start the game. You're just going to hit the play button. Then you're going to get coins. If you notice in Sky, now this is different. Most games are not like this. In Sky, you immediately get coins. You don't do anything else. You just, boom, start getting coins without even touching the screen. Then you avoid death. All right, now there's a lot going on in this avoid death. You have to jump, you might double jump. Actually, that's all that's going on. All right, you're just going to jump. All right. Then, after you do finally die, you're going to hopefully unlock a character or not. You can bypass that one and start the game. So if you don't have any money to unlock, we can remove that one. It's really only 3 points. It's almost the same as the slot machine. So Sky has a very simple core loop. It's very close to slots, a lot more than blackjack. And of course, like I said before, the devil is in the details. The avoid death bubble, it does have a lot going on, right? Because you have all these cloning. I didn't mention that because that's not really part of the loop. That's not the user loop. It's not what he's, you're not really focused on that. But you do have clones. You have multiple types of jumps. So you have a lot going on there, really. But the point of the core loop is simply this, right? I want to show you all the ideology behind it all, and then tell you exactly what you need to focus on. So the point of the core loop is simply this. It needs to be fun. Okay? Sometimes we get caught up in schematics of a game, like the graphics. Oh, it needs to be isometric, the orientation. No, it's got to be isometric and it's got to be portrait. Or the tap frequency, or it's got to be an isometric. Oh, here it is. We figured it out. Guys, we figured it out. It's got to be isometric. It's got to be portrait. It's got to be one touch, and you have to tap the screen once every 15 seconds. All right? Or once every 2 seconds, 1 second, half a second. And I'm not saying none of that stuff matters, all right? I think some of that stuff's really smart. I think it's an interesting point, and we've definitely seen some proof there. But we forget sometimes the most important part of the game is for it to be fun. Without fun, none of that matters. If you nail down all the hacky schematic stuff, but when you play the game, you are not really enjoying it, then who cares? It doesn't matter. So if your core loop is frustrating, then the game will not be a hit. All right? And I see a lot of frustrating games out there. And I don't know if you guys are echoing that, but I've seen a lot of games out there that are frustrating, and they don't typically do that well. And you know what's funny? You even take a game, it's got to be measured frustration. You even take a game like Flappy Bird, and while it can be frustrating, it never feels like you're cheated, and you get this real big sense of reward for getting further in the game. So you really have to focus on testing this core loop on many people, engaging their reaction. Create fun games that are balanced well. Create fun games that are balanced well. It sounds really simple. It's extremely difficult. I've told this story before. When I made the lines in, Ketchup was asking for the final version. And we had it ready. We were about to send it to him, but something just wasn't right. I went home, had it on my device, and I let my daughters play it. Both of them played it for half a second and quit. My wife played it for half a second and quit. And this was after we'd gone back and forth on this game so long. Because I'd gotten so good at the game because I designed all the levels. Nick had gotten so good at the game because he designed a lot of levels and been playing it so much that we were just zooming past everything on it. And then I let them play it, and they were struggling with it. And also, you know what happened with Ketchup? They played it so much that they were getting by. They had already greenlit this final version. They played the test flight link. And at the last second, we changed it. And of course, it ended up being the #1 game in the App Store. And I guarantee you, if we would have left it, then it would have not been. So you got to create fun games that are balanced well. The ultimate game is as enjoyable to an 8-year-old as a 60-year-old. It's extremely important. If you want to have a game that hits the top of the App Store, whether it's Flappy Bird or 2048 or Angry Birds or Crossy Roads, whatever, any bird game out there, then it's got to be a huge, really wide demographic. All right? And I've shared that before. I think that's why bird games do so well, because they're such a wide demographic. All right, you can never test too much. All right, now let's talk about surprise and wonder. That's the core loop. Very important to know your core loop and have a fun core loop, and don't have it frustrating, okay? When we talk about at the very end of this, the 5 rules I have for gameplay design, we're going to talk a little bit more about core loops and what you need to focus on there. But now I want to talk about what probably is not as important as the core loop, but God, to me, is the most exciting part. This is something that many people do not do in their games. They never focus on surprise. They never focus on wonder. And my God, remember, this is what makes it so exciting. This is like really an exciting business, right? Why is it so much fun? Why are games fun? Again, go read The Art of Game Design. Great book. And if you think about this, you research this stuff, and they don't really talk about wonder in that book. They talk about surprise, and I've had some other conversations with friends where I would like to take credit for the wonder thing, but it was more group effort. But this is why we play games, is for this wonder, is for this surprise element. And to me, it's the most fun part of game design. Surprise and wonder are the 2 most important reactions a user can get from your game. And they work hand in hand. Every time you cause a surprise, you raise the wonder meter of your players. All right, let's imagine everyone playing your game, they have a little meter right above their head, and just like a fuel gauge on your car. And it's how much wonder they have while they're playing your game. They're all going to start off on E, and your goal is, through surprises, to boom, 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 boost up that wonder meter. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen. Someone's going to play the lines in, and their wonder meter is going to be on empty. Then they're going to play, and they're going to see all these blocks break apart in this really cool pattern. All right, and then their wonder meter is going to go boop, 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 up a little bit. And then it's going to get really hot. They're going to start seeing all kinds of crazy stuff happening, all these blocks moving around, these really weird patterns, all these rooms, and it's going to max out, man. That wonder meter is going to be great. We're going to talk about this. I'm getting slightly ahead of myself, but this is when they start sharing. This is how things go viral, right? Their wonder meters through the roof, and they want to tell their buddy, dude, you got to try this. It's crazy. All these crazy rooms and stuff. It's really exciting. I find myself doing that, right? With Nick, if I find a really good game, I'll be like, hey, dude, you got to play this, or my wife. And so that wonder meter goes up, 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 and up. And then it's going to start dying out because they're going to see all the different levels in your game. And then they're going to say, okay. And as that wonder meter dies out, they're going to play less and less until your game's a distant memory for them. And that's fine, right? We're not expecting to build something that's going to last forever. Actually, I can't think of any games that came out 3 years ago that I still play. I played Doodle Jump for a long time. I don't know why, but I did. I guess that was more of a high score type thing, trying to beat my high score, but I don't play it anymore. It's not even installed on my phone. But that wonder meter is really important. If you can create a high amount of wonder while your game is being played, then you're going to have a hit. People naturally want to share games that provide these feelings. It's all about emotion. Games are all about feeling and emotion. If you provide real emotion in people, then they're going to do it. It's the same reason people want to go and buy a Porsche, right? Or any kind of sports car. They do it on emotion. It's not because they need to go 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. It's because they want the emotion of having that power, and they want the emotion of people seeing their neighbors seeing them in that Porsche and whatnot. People buy on emotion. It's the only reason that Louis Vuitton and Gucci and places like that are even in existence, okay? It's not because their fabrics are better, right? It's not because of any of that. It's because of emotion. And emotion causes stickiness. And this is a huge focal point we look at when making a game. Phases was completely built around surprise and wonder. You never knew what was coming next in that game. You know, it's funny, Phases for me was really a test of what BuildBox could do. I wanted to try to use at launch every feature available in BuildBox in Phases, and I didn't succeed at that because since I was doing the gravity in a certain way, etc., it was impossible to. We didn't have the gameplay change power up in there yet. But it did for that graphical style. We had tons of stuff going on, a lot of physics, a lot of objects just moving around, lots of cool stuff. All the wake up and all that was invented while doing physics. While creating Phases was like, hey, well, let's add this, to really push it. And it was built on that. It was built on wanting to surprise and give wonder to the player. And if you look at Phases, you'll notice that things are introduced later on. I got this idea from Mario Brothers. Probably the best surprise and wonder game in the history of mankind is Mario Brothers. What they'll do, let's say they have 8 levels, all right? Especially in the later versions. In the earlier versions, they didn't have as much to work with, but Super Mario World's a good example. In the first world, you'll only just have Mario, and he can be little or big, and that's the big thing you learn, right? Then the second level of the first world, then you get a fireball. Oh, okay, cool. It gradually gives you something new. You got a surprise there. Then when you get to World 2, you might have, like in Super Mario 3, you got the raccoon tail, and then you can fly. And what they do is just slowly give you new things in the game, new surprises, and it increases the wonder like crazy. So you're stuck on level 4. The big reason you want to get to level 5 is because you want to see what's going to happen next. You've been through all this crazy stuff. What's going to happen next? And of course, you're telling your friends about it and helping it go viral in the process. And we wanted to try to do that. So really wanted to do that with Phases. That was a big goal of mine. The Lines End was built around this principle of surprise and wonder with the exciting rooms like I talked about before. You would uncover these exciting rooms. They all did something different and push that meter up. Sky has a lot of surprise and wonder with unique level design, right? Doing this really crazy thing where out of nowhere you clone into 5 different characters moving around, really kind of confusing and blowing your mind. And then also the characters with trails was a big thing. If you end up unlocking a pretty cool character like the dragon, then you get really excited. It's like, oh my God, what else is next? You have this huge wonder. And with with the lock pictures for the characters, notice they're all the same, just like Crossy Roads does. You don't know what's actually there until you unlock it. So it leaves, God, that's like the definition of wonder. Nearly every successful game from Minecraft to Zelda is full of surprise and wonder. Yet hardly anyone ever mentions this. So before we stop this section, let me give you a huge tip for getting published. All right, so that's it on surprise and wonder. I'm going to give you guys a huge tip on core loop, surprise and wonder, all this kind of stuff when you're getting published. We're going to talk more about this next week. When you add smart elements in your game, like a strong core loop or surprise and wonder, make sure to tell your publisher this when you are pitching them. We'll dive into this more in the next session, but publishers love when you pitch them with reasoning behind it. All right? If you position yourself as not just a developer, but a marketer slash developer slash business owner who really knows how to create games that people are going to like, that has reasoning behind what you've created, then you're going to edge out someone else that just throws up a game, right? And think about it from a publisher's standpoint. They're in a business to have games that are successful. You're pitching them not just on that your game will fit in good with their other games, but that your game's going to be their next hit. So if you actually pitch them, and we're going to talk about this, guys, you don't pitch them a huge long thing. I'm talking about just, hey, look, we want to create a really addicting core loop to this game that would keep people coming back. And the way we did that, as you'll see, is by adding in this and this. Also, you'll notice that there's a lot of surprises in the game, and we hope that this increases the viralness of the game. So let me know your thoughts. Something really that simple. But most people don't do that. Most people just go, hey, here's my game. What do you think? And I even do that sometimes, right? But I've definitely learned, you don't want to pitch it from an annoying standpoint. But if you give them reasoning, that's not even pitching, right? That's just showing them why you created what you created and letting them know that, hey, look, I put a lot of thought into this. This has a real shot at being successful because I'm going above and beyond what everyone else is doing. All right, now let's talk about the look of your game. Again, if you want to really take this to the next level, then you can go and check out the Game Studio University section on art, but we're going to just talk about getting published, all right? So as you know, the look of your game is very important. In fact, we have a document we give potential BuildBox publishing clients that focuses solely on this. So we're going to review that now, and I want to mention something. Again, you have to figure out who you're going to pitch your game to. If it's going to be, BuildBox, if it's going to be Ketchup, if it's going to be Absolute, or whoever. There's a bunch of people out there. You guys have a huge list from last week, right? When you decide who you're going to pitch your game to, you want to look and make sure you're following a similar art style of them, okay? Some people like more muted colors, like Ketchup. They don't like really saturated, deep reds and really strong colors. And if you look through the history of their games that have been successful, the ones that have really saturated colors typically don't do well. Like Cubes recently didn't do as well, and it's much more saturated than most of it. They like more the lighter pastel style color. Absolute, not so much. They don't really care about that. All right, and we aren't as picky on that either. All right, so you really want to kind of go after the right color palette to what people want. But let me show you guys an example. I actually made this for a friend, and when I made it for him, we ended up turning it into an official document, me and Aaron, who runs BuildBox Games. And now when someone submits us a decent game that we think is okay, but it's not great, this is what we give them. All right, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but I want to go over it now because it's extremely important. You have to have good color palettes. All right, so yeah, and this is another, let me tell you, this is another really good tip, all right? No, please do not submit games to us with the example color palette below, as many people are seeing this document. You would not believe when we start giving this out how many people start copying this exact color palette, right? And go to the forum, the BuildBox forum, and look how many games are in the submit your game section that are the same exact color palette as the Lines In. It's unbelievable. Now, here's the thing, right? The Lines In is not a magic color palette. I picked this out in literally about 5 minutes. I looked at the old color palette. I felt like it was too saturated for Ketchup's game to line. So I lightened up my colors, made it a little bit more pink, grabbed a green I thought looked good, was done in like 5 minutes. So it's not like any of the reason of success. It could have been many different color palettes. That was all about the game design, right? And it started out being different color palettes. So when you want to model something, that's fine, but you want to improve it, right? And even now, looking, there's some things I could have done better with the Lines In color palette. It just humors me that so many people don't want to think outside the box. They just want the cookie cutter setup. Like, I'll give you a great example. Muyo made a game called Super Pixel, and it's awesome. And the color palette, I showed you guys it last week. The color palette's really great. It's really unique. It's got this hot pink. It's got this really bright blue, this white, this yellow, explosions, It's like an action movie, but in a minimal, super techno world. And it's great, and it's really unique. And that's what people want. They don't want to see the same thing. So Yeah, don't copy our color palettes because you look like everyone else. If you look like everyone else, you're not going to get your game signed, right? You want to borrow the ideas that other people are doing, but not make it look exactly like it. All right. If you see Zigzag was a successful game, don't get the same color blue. Do your own style. All right. So the color palette for your game, especially if it's minimal, is essential to its success. It will be the difference between the game doing well or completely bombing. At BuildBox Games, we do not publish games that aren't pleasing to the eye. Yeah, you can see I wrote this myself, so if there's any bad spelling mistakes, then that's my fault. Luckily, there's a fairly easy fix to this, even if you are not a designer. Let's take this simple game for example. While it's not the worst looking game in the App Store, the color palette is leaving much to be desired. We would not publish a game that looked like this. Let's discuss what's wrong with the game. The colors do not flow well together. There are too many colors, extra colors added when not needed. The colors are very saturated. The red is extremely red, really sticks out. Gradients are mismatched. Some are going down, some are going up, and going in different directions. Shadows are used in different amounts and not necessarily needed at all. So less is more. When designing games, less is truly more. Sounds a little bit like what I was talking about today. A great game designer is as good at cutting features as adding them. And this is extremely important when discussing design. Let me tell you why I learned this. A lot of you guys know I produce music. Been producing house, techno, electronic music for almost 20 years now. And signed to some record labels and stuff and still do it. Last night I was in the studio for 2-3 hours. It's like my way to relax. I don't care about signing stuff anymore. I just like getting in there and relaxing and doing it. And one of the hardest things in any design, it doesn't matter if it's audio, if it's creating a game design, or any type of art, is cutting stuff out. It's so important, especially with music, because you start clogging up the sound spectrum. And very important with design, you clog up your eyes too. So let's make this game more enjoyable by finding a good palette to use. And I'm going to show you guys color lovers in a second. I went there, found this color palette. It was on the home screen, literally just opened it up, snapped the first one I saw that I thought looked good. And then copy these colors into your game and look how it, and see how it looks, and that's it. So now you can see this color palette looks great, and it would fit in with the biggest publishers in the App Store. And I showed this to multiple publishers just to kind of show them what we were doing, and they were all, like, yeah, it looks great. All right. Again, don't steal those colors because that's the lowest common denominator. That's what people are going to do who don't think outside the box, and they're all going to look alike. That's when you go to a forum, you see everyone that has the same games that all look alike, they don't have success. Those people aren't coming back in 6 months and going, guys, dudes, I got signed and, we're making millions. That doesn't happen. It's not how it works. You got to be original. Okay. But that's a really good tip for creating colors. If you're not good at it, you don't have to be. Just go to colorlovers.com. I'm going to show you guys another one as well. So let's go over there. All right, so this is Color Lovers. If you've never been here before, it is color written in the British spelling, so that's important. And look, so you can look and see oh wow, they have patterns now. That's interesting. Oh, I hadn't seen that. I haven't been here. And gosh, it hasn't been that long, though. They must have done that recently. All right, so it looks like you have to click on patterns. So we can go here and look, and notice these are all muted colors. They pick really good palettes here. They're not really, really strong. Every once in a while you'll see a really strong one in here, but like this, that's a great looking palette. It's just a really smooth looking palette together. Like this is not, in my opinion, right? This looks like too candy girl tweenish, right? And but most of these are. Most of these are really good. Now, if you want to find a specific vibe, then you can try typing in something like forest. And then you can find, oh, that's really cool. Almost like a Monument Valley type thing. And you can mix and match these. Don't feel like you only can use this one. And so you can click it and you can look and see all the details. And you can click, I think they used to have, no, I'm wrong. I was going to see, oh, look at this. I've never seen this before. You can actually see what people create with the palettes. That's pretty cool too. So that's just latest palettes. I was going to see if they have, okay, here it is. They have tags. So you can say, okay, well, what about Dreamy? That's a good idea. And click here and see some, that are really unique. I mean, so many of these would look really, really cool, especially if you add them. If you set this in a new tab, and then this one, that's a little bit dark. Let's see if we can find another one so I can give you an example. Remember what that looks like. Yeah, start adding some of these like together on different levels. That would be a little bit bright. You can edit it. You know, you don't want to have to just stick with exactly what you see, right? Got to be able to think outside the box and say, you know what, I like these three. I think this is too bright for my game. Or if it's the main character, maybe it's not. But then you pull these colors into Pixelmator and you start playing around with it. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys another one called Coolers. All right, now let's start over because it's a little bit of a process. So you want to go to Coolers. Now I like using the app. I actually have this on my iPhone, and I use it, to be honest with you, I've never used the site before until about 20 minutes before this thing started. So I knew it was a site and I knew it was popular, but I like the app, and to me the app is better. So we can start the generator though, and this is pretty cool. You hit spacebar, and it's going to just pull up random colors. All right, now like I told you, I don't like super saturated. I love these kind of turquoise colors. I like both of these. So I'm gonna lock down both of these colors. I'm gonna hit spacebar, and it's gonna lock those and just try more. And I kind of like this one and this one. And then we're gonna try to get one more in there. And you can also change these. And I don't even know what they do. I guess that's saturation there. And that would be brightness. Yeah. So you can change that and try to get the same feeling there. But this, and they don't have this part on the app that I know of. Maybe they do. Actually, I think they do, but it's like I don't even use that, right? My favorite part is just generating a lot of different colors and sticking with with what I think looks good. Oh, that was kind of cool, that last one. That actually looks pretty good too. So that's a fun one, and I have probably 40 different color palettes saved by using this app. I gravitate definitely towards this bluish look, and that doesn't always translate well. So do know that just because you have fun creating a color palette doesn't mean it's going to necessarily translate well. All right, so that's it. I'm going to make sure that everyone can hear me. All right, yeah, everyone can hear me, so that's awesome. All right, cool. So now let's go back. And we're going to finish this out with my 5 gameplay rules. I'm going to open up some Q&A. So we talked a bit about a core loop. But to close this session, I want to quickly show you my 5 gameplay rules. Okay? First off, don't make it too easy. Now, this is a big newbie mistake. They'll make a game that's way too easy because they think that if it's too hard, people won't play it. It is a balancing act. If you make a boring game, it's deleted before you can say boring game because people just don't want to play something that's not going to challenge them. You've got to be able to create challenging games. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, I'm going to show you how to solve this conundrum, but don't make it too hard. It's the opposite of boring. It's frustrating, right? And even games like Impossible Gamer, these games are the hardest game in the world. The game design in most of those games, not all of them, and the ones that do are just super hard just to be super hard. They don't last long. They're just fleeting trends. But the ones like Impossible Game, they have good game design. Impossible Game is a great example. That's one of I call the genius games, where it makes you feel like a genius because it's impossible. It's so hard. You play it, oh my God, but you remember the pattern. It's a repeating pattern. It's not an endless procedural generated game, right? It's the same pattern over and over. It's a really big pattern, and it's really not that hard to play. But it makes you feel like a genius because you're doing all these really fast, quick taps and getting through the game really far. So it's frustrating maybe for the first 2 plays, but then after that, you start getting the flow down a little bit and you start feeling like a genius, and then you've transcended the frustrating part. All right, so how do you make a game that's not too easy because it'll be boring and not too hard because it'll be frustrating? Well, the answer is play test, play test, play test. Doesn't matter. If you go to Starbucks every day and you know the person behind the counter and it's not busy, say, dude, I hate to ask you, man, 5 minutes, you might check out this game. Everyone loves it. Everyone loves testing games. Just keep it on your device and play test it as much as you possibly can. It's a great conversation opener for you single guys out there. Really strong pickup line. And it's fun, right? Everyone loves to test a game that's not available to the public, like they're doing some cool super secret spy mission. All right, no death. Big one, big one, big one here. And I mentioned this with the core loop section. No death should ever feel like you were cheated. Now, this is a huge one, all right? And this is what spawned the conversation with the big publisher I started where I was talking about core loops and all that stuff. because this is a real big one. And I see everyone, I mean, Chilingo, it doesn't matter. Every publisher will put out games that makes this mistake. If you're ever playing a game and you feel like you died and it wasn't your fault, that like no one could be that fast, right? Or I don't know, how did I know that was going to go left instead of right? Then it's not a good game, okay? And we really focus hard on this. Lines in, I struggle with this a lot. Cut out a lot of scenes because I felt like they felt cheated. And yeah, it's got to be possible to proceed to the next section your first time playing if you're quick enough. You got to have the person feel like, man, I dropped the ball there every single time, or they're not going to want to play. All right, now make sure the skill level increases game time. Here's what I mean. You don't want a game where you don't get better and you're not able to play longer. For example, Flappy Bird, frustrating game, but has an addictive quality. And I think one huge addictive quality is when I first played that game, I could only get a score of 1 or 2. I didn't get it. By the third time, I got a score of 3 because my skill level just slightly increased. By the 5th, 6th time, I was able to get to 6 or 7. And then you really learn the pattern. And it's all about tap frequency, strangely enough. And you really hone in. And that game has a lot of depth to it because it's all about the frequency of tapping that screen. And it's almost like this hypnotic exact pattern. When you get that flow down, now I can get like to 30 or 40. And the better I get at that, the more I fine tune that, the longer I get. So as your player's skill level increases, you have to have them able to play the game for longer sessions, all right? Now, it sounds obvious, all right? That's obviously how it should be, but this is a good test if the core gameplay, all right, and your core loop is good or not. If you're not increasing gameplay time as your skill level increases, then you have an inherent flaw in your game that you need to fix. There's too much randomization, possibly. I'll give you an example, Lines In. There was a version of Lines In that had a ton of randomization, all right? You know how you can like turn a block and then you can add in a randomizer on the far right column. You can add that randomizer in. Or you can have the force, that I would have a ball shootout. It'd be a physics ball, and when you get within 500 pixels, it's going to shoot out, and I would have the force be between 0 and 100. And you would die. First off, it broke the second rule, or the third rule. No dash ever feel like you cheat. You feel cheated. And then it didn't really matter about skill level because it was all different. Everything was kind of different. So randomization is good, but it can screw up this fourth really important gameplay rule. You got to make sure that skill level increases game time. Don't let average sessions last too long, all right? Even for expert players. If people can play these type of games that we're making with Build Box, and they can play it for 5 minutes, then you're in a bad position, right? Even Sky, I've played that game a million times. I can't last more than about 30 seconds if I'm rocking, doing really, really well. Same with phases. Well, phases is different, really. I mean, God knows, phase 0, I can't last for 5 seconds. Could not believe how far people got in phase 0. I made that to be just excruciatingly impossible. But yeah, so 30 seconds max is my general rule. Look, nothing's set in stone. If you have some unbelievable game and you can get 40 seconds max because it's just so invigorating, then that's great. But as a general rule, 30 seconds is on the high end. I really don't want a single session. I don't mean a whole gameplay session for a user. I mean just one single game, right, when they're playing before they die. All right, guys, so now let's do some Q&A. And wow, I thought this was going to be shorter. Actually went longer than the last one. So we got about 15 minutes here, and go ahead and shoot some questions over. Jamie, thank you. That's awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That was yeah, that was a fun one for me. This has been a really exciting series for me to do. And it's so funny, you know, what's great. When I decided to do Publishing Live, I did not know I was going to be launching BuildBox Publishing. Like, that's something that I've obviously thought about for a long time, but it wasn't like I had ever planned on launching this at the same time. So it worked out well, because when I launch a whole new company and a whole new business like this, I really dive in deep into it. Obviously you have to, right? And so that's been something that's been on my mind a lot. So it was perfect timing. And yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoy it. All right, so any questions? It does not have to be specifically about this. You can ask a question about any of our games if you want. If you just have a question about what's going on in your games right now, if you have any kind of problems that you want me to help you with, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. So don't feel like it has to be just about this. Okay, all right, from Chris, what's the best way to think about choosing good color palettes since there are so many? Man, this is a tough one, Chris, because this is almost like telling someone to look at 10 paintings and say which one people are going to like the most. And that artistic style is not an easy one to get. The best way would be to look at the top games and really review the top games for the publisher you want to be on, right? Whether it doesn't matter who it is, right? Or even just the top games in the App Store, and see the ones that are the style you want to make, what kind of colors that they're doing. I mean, pull it up, make your own palettes in Pixelmator and get familiar with that. I guess the answer is to get more experienced in it. If you feel like you can't tell a good palette from a bad palette, then you need to get more experience in knowing what looks good in games. Like I now have gotten to the point where I can look at a game and I can visualize what that palette would look like, right? I understand a lot of people won't be able to do that, but get to the point where you can, and you'll definitely know what a palette is good. All right, awesome, Terry. That's great. Said amazing information. Realized 2 things we were doing with our games. Well, that's awesome. That's the whole goal of this, is to help you guys out. So that's great. Yeah, Chris, awesome, man. So focus on that, and you will be good. All right, Malingam said, what's going on with the next Mech Accelerator? Will you run them again next year? You know, I'm thinking about that. So I've honestly just been too busy. My goal was initially to do one in November, but I can tell you now it's not going to happen just because I'm so slammed with all this other stuff. So you know it's kind of funny. You know what I'm doing right now is everything I taught in Mech Accelerator. So when I was doing this Mech Accelerator, anyone doesn't know, I did a 2-day conference in San Francisco. It was a very small, limited conference. There's only 15 people there. And I went over about startups. It's the only time in a very long time that I've taught about something besides just video games. Now, half the people were there for games and half the people were there to learn about startup stuff. And Chris, a lot of people on here today were there, and it was a great event, really great. So yeah, my plan was to do one in November in a different city, probably Las Vegas. But it's funny, like I said, what I've done, I talk a lot of mech. I talk a lot about hiring really good people and getting out of the way, hiring great people, and then going and starting something else. And exactly like what I'm doing with the Billbox Publishing, right? Getting amazing people like Aaron and Tiana and Danny together, and then letting them run the show and getting reports and finding out how they're doing and steering when I need to steer. And doing that has taken up a lot of time. So I've been focusing on building my businesses. But yes, definitely next year, I would expect that I will do another one. And it was a great time. Some really, really killer people. Every single person that showed up last time was doing something really exciting. And yeah, they were really cool. I still talk to a lot of them now. So I would be excited to do another one. All right, Rom. Trey, this is Rom. Any plans for developing an also tool? Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm totally following that. Let me see if an ASO tool. You know what, Rom? That's interesting. That's a really good point that I would like to drive home. I think ASO is dead. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't. Is anyone here crushing it with ASO? If you are, I would love to hear it. I don't even see a point. I think ASO is only really beneficial if you are getting a lot of traffic. And it used to be ASO was your way to get traffic. But I'm not, you know what? I would love to hear one of you guys go, no, we're crushing it with ASO. But the reason I say this is because here's how ASO would work. All right, so you would come up with really good keywords that were going to be searchable. And when people search for these keywords, it's going to drive your app up. And then what you would do is you would have your game be seen, because you were going to make it in the adventure section, and Apple used to say, okay, here's the most recent adventure games. And what a lot of people would do is Apple would list those new games in alphabetical order, and so they would name their game Adventure Man. It starts with an A, it's going to show up first, and they were going to get 2,000 downloads that first day. When they did that, it was going to boost up their ranking. So when someone searched for something, it was going to show high on the search results, which is going to boost it up more. And then, boom, it was going to go up, and they were going to get a lot of downloads. And we did that. It worked extremely well. And then Apple, of course, was like, look, this is terrible. Everyone's naming their game starting with A. That's totally stupid. And I mean, again, we did it. I'm not calling anyone who did it stupid. But it was a silly loophole. And to patch it, I think they were like, screw it. Let's just remove that completely. And when they did that, I think it really killed the ASO as being the main way of of getting downloads. And if your next question is, well, what do we do now? Well, I've made so much more money, gotten so many more downloads with publishing than I ever did with ASO, that I think it's by far the best route to go. Hence this course. Jesse, I will respond to you. So, by the way, I just got back and all this stuff and saw your email today. All right, you mentioned making changes to Lines In and having your wife and daughter play test it one last time before you ship to Catch App. What specifically did you change or alter that made it more engaging in your opinion? Okay, great question. All right, so what we did, the very beginning of the Lines In, we didn't want it to feel repetitive. I was worried that, let's say you've played this game 20 times. And then you've seen the same room 30 different times over, or let's say you played it 400 times and you've seen the same room 30 times. Well, right when you turn on the game, you go into that room and you're like, God, all right, I'm kind of sick of this game. So I wanted a truly random beginning. So what I did is I had 20 very, very small scenes. I mean, these scenes were like 50, now probably I think like 200 pixels or something like that, really short. And the game only chooses from these small scenes for about 1,000 pixels. So it's completely random. And we had to really work at it hard to make these scenes so they mix and match well together and it doesn't feel weird. And that's why when you play the Lines In for the first 5 seconds, it's always unique. You'll never see the same thing twice. It's because we have all these little cut up scenes that are mixed and match. Well, I originally made that really hard, but the problem was I came up with this idea to do this, to mix it up and add these little cut up scenes in the beginning at the very end of development. So Catch App was like, hey, we want the final version. And we sent them the test flight version. And I added this in there. Everyone was happy with it because we were all so good with the game that we were just zipping by it really easy. And then I tested on them and they were all dying. They never got, none of them, all three, never got to a room. They just constantly died in this little beginning section that was supposed to be a 5 second, filler. So it was a real obvious, hey, I got to do something. Thank God, all I had to do is hop on the build box on my computer at home and separate them, make them a little bit wider, a little bit easier, and then problem solved. Yeah, Chris, we do need a reunion. Well, I told you guys for sure, if we do another one, we'll make it a reunion party as well. All right, Jamie, my plan to localize in terms of language text in the game itself when using BuildBox to create different builds and submit these under translated game names. Wow, that's an interesting idea. Well, Apple will have a problem with this way of localizing and releasing the same game in different languages to local app stores. Do you know? Jamie, I do not. If anyone knows that, I would be curious as well. We will have localization. It's not been a priority because it's not been a priority for any publisher we've dealt with, for anyone we've really talked to. And yeah, so it just hasn't been a huge priority for us. I mean, if we were making a messaging app like WhatsApp, it'd be a huge priority. But for what we're doing with really simple addictive games, and most of the games in the App Store, or not most, but a lot of them are just English only, and it's pretty common through most international communities. I know not all. So that hasn't been a priority, and that's how this stuff works. Just so I don't know, Jamie, you weren't even asking if I would put that in there. I want you to know we are planning on that. But every option that we put into BuildBox, it replaces something else. And localization's a pretty big one. It's big because we have to change the UI structure. Have we even started doing that, Nick? Talking about localization in BuildBox? Yeah, we looked at it. Because think about this. How are you going to do that, right? The only way to do it is to have a drop-down box on the menu screen where you have every single language. And then you have a drop-down and you cycle through every language. You add new buttons and all this stuff, right? Not saying it's not doable. But then you have the problem is, what if we have UK and or we have, let's say, Japanese, and then we have English. And then on the Japanese one, though, we don't want to replace but a few of the buttons, not all of them. It gets really complicated from a UI perspective. So we started playing with that, and it was like, okay, look, we can do things like multiple characters, or we can do this. We can't do both, though, because we only we have 5 developers, and we have to use their time wisely. So anyway, to answer your question, I'm not sure if you can submit different games like that. I do not know. But I will tell you this. It wouldn't be my number one focus because I do not think any publisher that I know of is going to require that. Some will request it, but none are going to require it. And my focus would be creating a great game that's going to get published. Not that there's anything wrong with it either. I'm just saying, that would be my first focus. All right, Ted, when it comes to publishing, do any of the publishers soft launch to see the viability of a game, or they just go for it? They all go for it with our style games, right? Like, I don't pretend we're making huge involved social games, right? With those games, they do, obviously, as you know, Ted, I know for sure, they will launch in Canada, and they'll run that, like Supercell, they ran that game in Canada for 6 months or something like that, and then killed it because it didn't perform like they wanted. But no, with build box style games, they just spray it and put it out. All right, so how many levels should our game have before we show them to a publisher? Closer to 100 is from Terry. Terry, we always try to stick with 100 levels. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll do that before showing it to a publisher, but also it's a little bit of a different question because we have a relationship already with them. If I was going to show someone a game, and we're going to talk about pitching publishers, I believe that's the next session. But I usually show a video to gauge interest, and I'll talk more about this in detail. And then if they're interested, I show them the game. And I would say 50 levels minimum. You don't want them to have a repeating feeling in the game. And then, but you need 100 before release, But honestly, when you're first starting out, like when I first pitched Ketchup, Phases was finished. You got to be careful pitching half-finished games until you have a relationship. Once you have a relationship, it's totally different because it's just like, hey, look, guys, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? You like how this image looks? Oh, okay, all right, screw it. We'll do the next one or whatnot, right? It's a lot more conversational. So in the beginning, I guess to answer your question, if you want to go above board and do it the real right way, and there's so many people doing it, so competitive, you should, then yeah, you would need 100 levels. All right, Chris, any way to have BB launch into test flight so we can do that ourselves? You know what's funny? And to answer your question, no, you have to just do it like the old-fashioned way. But something that Nick has wanted to do, God, since the release of BuildBox, I think before BuildBox even came out, he wanted to do this, and we are going to do it one day, is have a companion app. So what you can do is you'll download an app from the App Store, and it's connected to Wi-Fi, and BuildBox is on Wi-Fi. And then you can send your game. You have a play button. You also have like a button that's pushed to push to app or whatever. You press it, and boom, it sends the BB doc over to your app. And what the app is really just a BB player. It's like just a BuildBox gameplay, almost like an emulator, just for for the system that is BuildBox. And so you can have all your BB docs that you're working on in this app, click them and play them right there. And that's something we will do in the future. But right now we're 100% focused on BuildBox 2 and want to bring some real big features that are going to change the game. So that's not coming with BuildBox 2.0, but I would not be surprised if it came in BuildBox 2.x. All right, Thomas. Is adding badges or achievements to a game a good way to engage players with your game? I don't know, because I'm going to be honest with you, I've never done it. So I don't know. We've had a lot of big games though. And again, I've said before, we've had a lot of successful games and on not webinars with you guys, but people say, well, yeah, you're published by Ketchup on your successful games. And that's true. But you got to remember, we're also the most successful developer with their platform, right? We've never had a game not break the top 25. So it's all relative, right? But the reason that we've had a lot of success is, again, it's the core loop, it's surprise and wonder. So here's my thoughts on that. Badges and achievements are great if you have great core loop and you have great surprise and wonder in your game, right? All it does is sprinkle on awesomeness if your game is already awesome. It's not going to ever be what makes your game awesome though. All right, David. Where's the best resource to see how to step-by-step effectively publish from export to software upload on all supported BuildBox platforms? Video tutorial. Well, what's funny, Dave? When we first, we really went back and forth on this, the team. We first released BuildBox, and our answer was to go and hire someone to do that for you. And I understand that's not what everyone wants to do, right? A lot of people want to do it. But I will say this. First off, judge your real technical skill. Right? If you have like zero clue about how coding works or any of that kind of stuff, then I wouldn't do it. If you're like me and you like understand enough to get you in trouble, then definitely go do it. And YouTube, there's tons of videos on YouTube. Also the forum, post on there and people can do it as well. We've opted not to create and try to support that because it would just eat up a lot of hours. The community's been really, really good, and we want to spend our time again focusing on pushing out new features and doing the kind of stuff we're doing, and it's worked out good so far. So there's not a library of videos per se, not to say we won't do it one day, right? But it's all, what's funny, running a business like BuildBox is no different than playing StarCraft. It's all about collecting resources and spending those resources, and nothing is free. So if we create a full library like that, it's not free. It's not free for us, and I'm not talking about financial. It's not free for you guys because it's at a cost of features and other things, right? And so my job playing this big StarCraft game called BuildBox is to effectively do what I think is best and get the things done that I think we need to get done. So there is a huge community talking about that stuff, I know, for Amazon, for Android and iOS. For Amazon TV, though, I'm not sure if you'll find anyone really talking about that or not, but you could definitely start the discussion. All right, Chris, how do you balance randomization to avoid boredom versus repeated levels to increase player skill? All right, that's all about the core loop of creating your game. It's all about that play testing. And, man, I guess to answer your question, the way that we do it is through experience, right? After you do this stuff a lot, the more you do it, the better you get. So there's no magic bullet there, though. It's just about really when the game feels right, All right, let's see. Sakir, would you release a new game without a publisher? If not, why? Well, let me say this. I would release a new game without a publisher if I had a relationship with one of the app stores. I would definitely do it. If I had some reason why this game was going to do well, because I went to PAX, and PAX is Penny Arcade Exchange. It's like a big con for games, and there's a lot of mobile people there. If I went there and then I met someone who runs Touch Arcade, and they really liked what I was doing, and they were going to do a write-up on it. Or if I was it was greenlit on Steam, we released it on Steam, and it was a huge success. Again, I don't think ASO is a real viable business strategy. It's an addition. It used to be you could base your business on ASO, and I don't believe those days are really there anymore. Definitely not like they were, right? They might be a small remnant of what they once were. So to say you're going to go and do it on your own is fine, but you have to have a strategy, right? Because if you don't, you're going to be like everyone else out there releasing games with no strategy. But if you have a good strategy and you have a way to make it work, and it might not be a publisher, maybe it's a relationship, right? That's the next best thing, right? Then in that case I would. So I would, because I have some relationships with people and I could get the game seen. But if I didn't have that, I would definitely focus on a publisher. And hey, we're still focusing on publishers. We're about to finish a game called The Pit that Ketchup's going to be doing next. I've been talking to David at Absolute, because now that we have a full team set up, we have more games than we could even release, on our own. All right, Martin, how are you, my friend? If you send a game to a publisher and they are not selected and then work on the game again, would you resend it once it's better or wait for a new game to contact the same publisher? Now, you're asking my opinion, right? Me, I've never sent a game to a publisher twice because I don't want to be associated with that mentality if they don't pick it the second time, all right? If I send the same game twice and they don't pick it up and I get no response both times, I don't want them to think, okay, this guy sends duds over and over because he wants to get it made. So no, me personally, I try to only send games that I am really sure they're going to get signed because they are rock star games, and then only do it once, at least to get some interest. All right, Jesse, awesome, brother. All right, Jamie, as a follow-up to my question on language and localization, this is a priority for games like Dorothy that have a narrative in them. Totally agree. I agree with that. And it's something, you know what? Dorothy's the only game I've ever seen made with BuildBox that has a narrative. And we're going to see more of that, especially with BuildBox 2, and it will increasingly be more important. But if you're making games like we're making, if you're making on the simple side, and that's what 99% are, I don't think it's important. But you raise a very valid point. All right, need more info about GDC 2016 in San Francisco as we discussed on the earlier webinar. Do we need to register for passes or will it be given by the BuildBox team? No, we cannot get you passes, unfortunately, for GDC. They do not do any discounts like that. But yes, I will have Natalie. You're right. It's about time to go ahead and start planning for that. So I will have Natalie send out an email this week that goes over the details, the hotel, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to go to GDC, to be clear, we are doing something at the same time, but we are not a part of the GDC. So we're in the same location. We got a great venue. It's called, I think, Park 22. It's Park, P-A-R-C, and then 2 numbers after it. And it's a really cool, look it up, it's a really cool venue. And it's going to be great. But yeah, you'll need to, if you want to go to GDC, that's separate. All right, do you plan to create an asset store for plugins and audio and video animations and other stuff to buy and sell through BB? Great question, Thomas. So, you know what's funny? We built one. We literally built a complete asset store design, all this stuff that was going to be inside of BuildBox. And we started production on it, and then I halted it and did the master collection instead. I was going to have some of those assets in there, and I decided not to. And the reason is, I think to make a really effective asset store, it's got to be a user community building the assets for it. It can't just be us supplying it. That's not how this is going to work. And if the user community is doing nothing more than making art, then I think it's going to turn into a lot of asset stores out there that leave a lot to be desired. People uploading a lot of crap art, to be honest with you, and rehash stuff that you can see on every other site out there and have a low quality experience. So what would be cooler? And I've thought about this, and me and Nick have talked about this. One day we're thinking about building an API. So there's going to be something that's coming soon. This will be the first little input on BuildBox 2. So there's something we're making called components. All right, now I'll give you an example. Wake Up is a component. All right, that's on the right side. We're not talking about an action, any of that stuff. We're talking on the right side over there. Wake Up's a component. What would be another? A spawner is a component. All right, those are components to an object. And we would love to one day make an API where people can create components. And then we'd have to make a decision where that should be something that is just freely shared, or people can actually try to build a business around it. That will be dependent on the growth of BuildBox, which at this stage looks great. And of course, but to build a real, for people to really build a real living around an asset store like that, which is what we would want, then we'd have to have a lot of people on board, and there'd have to be a need for it. So anyway, that's a little bit, we are thinking about it. All right, Rom said, Trey, a few weeks ago you mentioned that you were teaming up with Ketchup and developing something big. Do we know anything more on that? Oh man, how close are we to releasing more info about our secret project with Ketchup? November 1st, you think? Publicly?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. We're really close. We're really close. What's the date today? Let's see. It's October 26th. Yeah, I'm hoping that you will definitely know about it, so don't worry. You'll know about it. But I'm hoping that it will be on November 1st. So we will have new information about that soon. All right, Ted said, what has a better chance? A game that has 100 plus levels or a game that has random levels? Neither has a better chance, I don't think. I think it's all about really, really strong gameplay and the core loop and all that stuff. You can look at that lock game, which is genius. If you guys have seen that lock game where it's like infinite, but it's leveled and it just gets harder and harder and harder, that was a really cool game. But yeah, so I don't really have a preference. So, I personally like leveled games. I don't think we see enough of it out there, but that's just personal. I just enjoy them. All right, Jesse said, when you mentioned 100 levels, are you speaking towards 100 scenes? Yes, I am. On Endless Gameplay, 100 scenes is what we always shoot for. So Sky, Lines In, all of our games are 100 scenes. Balance, any game that we publish a developer or customer in BuildBox games, they all are required to have 100 scenes, except for leveled games, they have to last for an hour. That's the rule on that. In later build of BuildBox, do you have any plan to create level design like Candy Crush? Not really. I don't think this is that kind of builder. Maybe in the future, but not even with BuildBox 2.0. We're just not going after like the match 3 market. And I don't think that's going to be a really big success for anyone. I think that if we could graph that out, we have definitely seen the top of that trend. And look, I could be wrong, but that's my gut feeling, is that match 3 has already been done to death. Yeah, Thomas, API would be cool. Yeah, Torsten, API is interesting. Oh, did you? I started enhancing animation box regarding an edition figure. Cool, man. Yeah, so that's definitely something we want to focus on more in the future, is the developer community adding on to our software, but we're not there yet. I mean, God, it's amazing how early. I mean, platforms like Unity, I didn't even know about them at version 1.0. I don't think I heard about Unity like version 3. So yeah, lots of exciting things coming. What will be the big change in BuildBox 2? Well, one of them is going to be this component system. Adding in, we'll have a lot of new components there, but there's a lot more to it than that. So it's, yeah, I don't want to spoil the surprises. I don't want a rumor flying around here or there, but I'm hoping to have it out in December. But yeah, we got everyone working really hard right now to try to hit that date. It's going to be tough. Any plans on a particle system anytime soon? I can't comment on that, Paul, but good question. What about seeing level selection in a game? Will this be feature added in 2.0? Can't comment on that, Lucas, but I will say that it's been very much requested and something we have definitely noticed, right? So I'll tell you that. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up here. Hope you enjoyed the second week of Publishing Live. Of course, tomorrow, make sure you're here tomorrow. It's not going to be next week. We're going to be doing it tomorrow, and then we're going to close it out on Wednesday. So make sure you're here. I appreciate you guys coming. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.